My dear friends, welcome to Chess 24. In the current video I would like to take a look at one of the main lines in the Slav defense. This position arises after d4, d5, third move knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, dc4, a4, and now e6. This line was barely known some years ago, but became increasingly popular, understandably, after Kramnik used it successfully in the match against Leko. And ever since, the system has been played in a lot of games on the top level, and up till now it is presenting quite a bit of headache for white players, since it is very, very solid. And in this video I would like to take a look at different possibilities white has at his disposal. e3. Now these are major crossroads. If white plays e4, which is definitely a possible move, and after bishop b4, e5, knight d5, bishop d2, b5, the game becomes very sharp. White definitely has compensation for the sacrificed material. Black is pawn up, and there has been quite a lot of developments here. It seems that theory claims this leads to, well, usually leads to a forced draw in some wild complications. This was never really my cup of tea. I always tried to play e3 with white in this position, with varying success, however. And e3 leads to the main position of the line: castles, bishop e7, queen e2, castles. Because of the white's lead in development, it's very dangerous for black to take on d4. So knight takes d4, queen d4, knight b5, followed by bishop f4. Black begins to suffer quite seriously. So black usually castles, and now white plays rook d1. This is more or less the very central position of the entire variation, and I would like to take a closer look. This position is essentially characterized by the presence of the white pawn on a4. With the pawn on a2, white would have a classical position from the queen's gambit accepted, and the pawn on a4 clearly has some drawbacks. Above all, black has a stronghold on b4 for his knight, also en route to d5. The advantages, however, is that the pawn can sometimes go to a5, limiting the scope of black's pieces, and sometimes also the rook can get active on the a file, joining the eventual attack by a3. But of course, now all this talk is a bit hypothetical. Let's look at the lines and see whether black can profit from the fact that the square b4 is available to him. Now black has two main moves. Both of them pursue the same aim. One of them is knight d5, and another is knight b4. First of all, ideally d5 has to be prevented, and secondly, also the knight is extremely well placed on d5, so it's logical that black's main tries revolve around this idea. So knight d5, let's start here, is an extremely reasonable move, has been played quite a lot at top level, and here white has different ways to deal with the position. One of them was queen e4, knight f6, queen h4, and now after knight b4, this queen on h4 looks kind of threatening, but in fact white hasn't really been successful in the games here. The bishop g5, b6. It seems that queen on h4 does not really create sufficient amount of attacking chances, and otherwise white really doesn't have much of a plan in this position. So the main move has been bishop b3. It is a semi-waiting move, and one of its reasons is that now after knight a5, bishop has a convenient way to retreat on c2, and otherwise also black is asked to make a move. And now if black goes rook e8, well, also the same logic as before. Black makes a useful move and asks white to show his plan. Now, interestingly enough, white can play h4. The reason for this being that after bishop takes h4, white can go knight takes h4, and now queen h4 is actually impossible because of the pin on the e file. So this rook e8 creates new possibilities for white. This the very similar position, although with the black pawn on a6, was actually played in a world championship match between Kramnik and Kasparov, and also in that game black suffered quite a lot. Also here it seems that white is pressing the direct try to hit white's bishop, ends in white's advantage after d5. ed, knight takes d5, and the rising ending does seem better for white. White is winning the pawn on f5 because of the double attack, and black is yet to prove that his compensation is sufficient. And thus this really presents no problems for white. Instead of rook e8 in this position, knight b4 is a more popular continuation. After knight e5, bishop d7, queen g4, knight f6, queen g3, bishop e8, we arrive at the typical isolated pawn position where white is reasonably active on the king side, and black's position is very solid. So definitely a position which is playable for both sides. Interestingly, Kramnik, in one of the later games playing white, chose bishop d2 in this position. I haven't yet analyzed this move deeply and cannot really give much of a definite conclusion, but Kramnik, having played it, definitely deserves attention. And one of the reasons for this move could be that with the move bishop d2, white actually at times prepares the advance a5, since the bishop starts controlling this diagonal. And also, once again, it's a useful or semi-useful move, forcing black to make a choice. And here in the game Kramnik-Korobov, knight cb4 was played. I'm not sure if, for instance, a move like rook e8 is a better choice. And after knight cb4, white played a5. Very often a5 is a useful positional idea, limiting the scope of the black queen. Now after bishop d7, knight takes d5, knight takes d5, knight e5. Black's position is still very solid. And after bishop e8, queen f3, Korobov made a move which black should normally avoid in this kind of a line. And after f6, knight d3, played bishop f7, queen g4, and after the knight appeared on c5, black had to play bishop takes c5. White's advantage was beyond any doubt. So whilst in itself I find it difficult to believe that bishop d2 poses black insurmountable problems, this is still a very interesting continuation, and as I said, Kramnik, having played it in an important game, definitely deserves attention. So this is all about knight d5. Both bishop b3 and bishop d2 seem interesting and promising enough. The other main move is knight b4. This is the move which annoys me more at the moment. And here, knight e5 misses its aim a little bit because black is able to continue the development with bishop d7. And white cannot do anything about the bishop coming to c6. For instance, after knight, the bishop g5, bishop c6, knight takes c6, bc, we arrive at a very typical structure where the black pawn was forced to c6, and whilst it might look weakening, it's also clear that black has paralyzed the d4 pawn more or less forever, and thus will enjoy a stronghold on d5 for a very long time. And whilst a position like this is still very playable for both sides, still I feel that and always felt that the structure like this is very, very hard to break. So I would, with white, go for bishop g5. And here black has several possibilities, and in most of the cases white has some interesting ideas. First of all, the classical continuation is bishop d7, but here after d5, ed, knight d5, by force we get a position where black is suffering a little bit. There have been attempts to prove that this position is a forced draw, but in fact every now and then black continues to lose in this position, and one of the more recent games, Kramnik Wang Hao, also ended in white's win. So really not a very nice thing for black. The bishop d7, he really has to fight for a draw without a single chance to win the game. So black usually plays something else. Rook e8 had a very reasonable reputation. In fact, probably still has a very reasonable reputation. But when analyzing this position, I believe I found something quite interesting. White goes knight e5, bishop d7, and here comes a very unusual move, which is even difficult to understand. That is, white goes bishop f4, and this is, I believe, a new move. And after bishop f4, well, the main reason for bishop f4 is to prepare d5. At the moment, all the d5s don't work because the bishop will always be hanging on g5 at the end of the line. After bishop f4, however, d5 becomes a serious threat, and black cannot really play bishop c6 as in previous lines, because knight f7 wins for white. And also after knight fd5, we get another possibility due to the fact that black has played rook e8. The f7 pawn becomes a weakness, and after queen f3, knight takes f4, queen takes f4, rook f8, d5, white suddenly gets a very serious initiative. So after bishop f4, Black would normally play rook c8, d5, and a forced sequence of moves here, bishop f6, queen d3, leads to the position where white is pawn up. Black does have some drawing chances, but is very unlikely to enjoy himself for the rest of the game. The only problem after bishop g5, the problem that I haven't yet been able to solve, is h6. But I suspect, since Kramnik is going for this position quite frequently with white, there might be some hidden ideas here. And now after bishop h4, bishop d7, the ideas with d5 no longer work. And I haven't yet been able to find something convincing for white. After knight e5, bishop c6, once again we get a typical isolated pawn position, and white has to find something concisive to be able to fight for the opening advantage. It is possible that instead of bishop h4, some other moves have to be analyzed. One of them would be bishop takes f6, bishop f6, and knight e4, trying to use the fact that black's queen side is not yet fully developed and maybe get some concrete initiative. Or after h6, to go maybe bishop d2 and try to get something similar to Kramnik-Korobov after going a5 and knight e5. And all in all, as I said, white has a lot of promising ideas in the entire line, but in this position you would probably still have to do some work of your own, at least to get acquainted to the type of position. Otherwise, I have a feeling that we covered this opening nicely. As I said, Slav with 5 e6 is an incredibly popular opening at the moment, and it's important to be well prepared against it with white. And I hope this video helped you to understand some of the nuances of this position. And thanks for being here, and see you again. Bye.